This is St. Louis on the Air from St. Louis Public Radio. I'm Elaine Cha. Before Reesha Archibald became a Hollywood TV producer and started collaborating with Cedric the Entertainer and Eric Rhone, she was in Missouri thinking about ways to use her artistic talents. It's been a minute since she graduated from Hazelwood Central and Lincoln University. But since then, she's executive produced television shows, including Bounce TV's Finding Happy and Johnson. The latter, which wrapped up its 4th season in the fall, tells the story of 4 Black men, all with the last name Johnson, who are navigating real-life issues and facing them as lifelong friends.
It is damn hard to find a way to grow together, but you got to concentrate on the simple things you did when you first met. Hold on to them.
What y'all, brothers or something?
That's right, just different moms and dads.
Last week, I had the opportunity to talk with Reesha. She joined me from her kitchen, where she has a small item from home that she takes with her whether she's in Los Angeles or in Atlanta.
Right next to me on my left-hand side, I have a little makeshift bottle of Red Hot Riplets seasoning.
Okay.
And I've often told my friends I need to reach out to them because I need to be a brand ambassador because I put this on everything.
Oh, okay.
Literally everything. So if you don't have the seasoning, y'all, go get it because it will change your life. Like it has everything you need in it. Yes.
So speaking of seasoning, given, the way that you have grown up where you've lived, you lived in St. Louis for quite some time and in Missouri before making your way out to Los Angeles. What is the seasoning that you bring to the shows that you have worked on? Let's start with Finding Happy.
Sure. I feel like St. Louis is such a great space to really hone your craft. St. Louis has a very unique way of supporting you or not. And when they support you, you're good to go out into the world. And when they don't, you're not ready yet. Because I feel like St. Louisans really live and breathe by the adage, the show me state. And I think that work ethic that I grew up with, just from my family. I'm from Denver and St. Louis, but my parents are from St. Louis. So I was raised with a St. Louis background and then, finished high school there. Went to college not too far. But St. Louisans have a work ethic that is unmatched. And I think that ability that I was raised with from my parents and in my village is really what enabled me to go out into a space like Los Angeles and really get my footing. Finding Happy was a dynamic story because, it touched on a young lady who was 36 years old, not in the space that she thought she would be in personally, career-wise, and just in general. And I feel that I was able to bring something to that narrative because I've been that woman before. I remember when I was 36 and in that same space and trying to figure out, okay, what's next and what am I really doing? And so with that real life understanding of where that young lady was in various ways, I was able to bring not only my work ethic, but my true understanding of the character. And so, but I think that just in general, I think that human beings overall are always trying to find happiness in some way. And so I think that we have to give each other grace and we have to give ourselves grace also because, finding happiness is not always as simple as looking out of a window. It's what are the dynamics that go into finding that window.
That's right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And just everything I've been through in my life, it has led to me being able to be the producer that I am. I have a background in supply chain logistics, and having that corporate background adds to that seasoning that you asked about because I was able to learn management skills or build on my management skills because I already had them. But it really helped me on a corporate scale be able to learn how to manage budgets on a large level because I was managing, $1 million budgets. And I think that lends to the seasoning as well. And then also being a creative, being an actor, I think that also lends to my producing skills as well because I'm able to bring creativity, not just administrative.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so you're clearly bringing many ingredients that are necessary to putting together a show that not only is authentic to what you know and what you understand, but to shows that have been very successful. And one of those is Johnson, which I got to watch, admittedly, for the first time last night. I was watching it in bed. I had earbuds in, and I was laughing out loud and telling my husband, this is something that you really should be watching. Yeah. How is it that you would describe Johnson to someone who has no familiarity with it at all?
First of all, thank you so much for this support. I'm so glad that you loved it. Johnson is a story about 4 Black men living their lives. They're collaborating with each other. They've been friends for decades. They were childhood friends, and they are navigating life like human beings. This story humanizes Black men and Black people in general, because I think oftentimes Black people are portrayed as thugs and deadbeat dads and, absentee fathers and husbands, and a lot of negative connotations. And so this story is really reminding people that Black men are just like every other man. Mm-hmm. They deal with divorce. They deal with fatherhood. They deal with, trying to find their space in society. They are good citizens. They are leaders. They do have feelings, and they do try to find their way. But I think that this narrative also shows how Black people come together in unique ways and how Black men lean on each other. It's really funny because I remember one particular day we had a gentleman who was our police officer on set, and he was Hispanic, and he was, getting to view some of the scenes, and he said, that's so funny. This is so good. My cousin is dealing with this same thing right now. And so Johnson is again just humanizing these men and showing the normal Black man. Like, I was attracted to this story because I saw the men in my life. I saw my ex-boyfriends, and I saw my brothers, and I saw my daddy and my uncles. I saw the men I'm around all the time. And sure, we have, those negatives too, but every race does. Not right. Every race has, drug dealers and users and pimps and all the things, you know what I'm saying? But I think by and large, Black men especially are portrayed as the negatives. And so this project was very important for me to tell the story of, because I wanted to make sure that on a larger platform, people who were not like me and or who were like me saw Black men in a different way. I really feel like Black men need to see themselves this way. Black women need to see Black men this way. Our children do too, but also people who are not Black need to see Black men this way, because oftentimes in media, we see Black people how they're portrayed. Right. If you're not around us all the time, you're going to think that we are the way we are in media, when there's a very intentional agenda to make us look bad, and it works. And so telling this story was so important to me. And so I'm so grateful that my team at A Bird and a Bear, Eric Rhone, and Cedric the Entertainer, and our entire team jumped on board with this when I brought it to the team. And here we are, 4 seasons later. I'm so blessed and grateful.
Right. So on that note that you had made about the relatability of what the characters, the 4 men whose names are, last name is all Johnson, Greg, Omar, Keith, and Jarvis, right? Do you think that the specificity, though, of these men and their experiences is also part of what, in some ways, what could be thought of as being a contradictory or paradoxical matter, that is what makes them relatable because there is that specificity?
Absolutely. The thing that I love about these characters is that they are all so different. But that's very true to the Black experience. Oftentimes, like in this particular story, the 4 men grew up together in school. They all stood behind each other in line. You know how when you were little, you had to stand in line and you stood in alphabetical order? Well, these 4 boys were in line and became best friends. And they, maintained their friendship over the years. But the beautiful thing about this is that they all have their own very unique personalities. But in the Black culture, that's exactly how it is. You might have the nerd and the jock and the bougie one and the I don't know what's going on person all in the same friend group. Because oftentimes, oh, that's just my friend I grew up with. We've been best friends since we were 5. And that's my guy. I know he's crazy, but that is what it is. You know what I mean?
Right.
So we have a lot of that in our experience, but I love it because Black people are not monolithic. Nobody, no group of people are monolithic, right? And so this story is so important to me because it reminds us that, we all can coexist. We all do coexist. It's a very normal thing in our community that's just not shown often enough.
And it got started in 2021. Reesha, do you feel like by the time you got to Hollywood and you were in a position to push for a show like Johnson, to be an executive producer on it, that there was more readiness for it?
I feel like for Black folks, we've always been ready for it. If you think about the 90s, there was a slate on slate of Black content that was out there, that was positive, that made Black folks look great. And it told our stories in a real way and they were all successful because it was telling our truths. So I think that, in 2021, we were just hungry for something like this because it's been lacking in media for a while. I want to say since 2008, you really haven't seen a whole lot of Black content that hasn't been slapsticky or super dramatic or hypersexualized or what have you. So I think that this show does so well because we've been hungry for it.
We need to take a short break. We'll hear more from my conversation with television producer Reesha Archibald when we come back. This is St. Louis on the Air on St. Louis Public Radio.
The Gateway brings you the day's news each weekday from around the St. Louis region and the state capitals in Jefferson City.
Our schools are accredited. We don't need this bill.
And Springfield.
How many more years must pass before lawmakers see time is of the essence?
I'm Abby Larico. Join me each weekday for The Gateway on the STLPR app or wherever you get podcasts.
Welcome back. We're listening to my conversation with television producer Reesha Archibald. Reesha is from St. Louis and now works in LA and Atlanta, producing series like Finding Happy and Johnson, which wrapped its 4th season in the fall. Before the break, Reesha was reflecting on the breadth of television shows in the 1980s and 90s that showcased Black stories in authentic, positive ways. Let's dive back into the conversation. Reesha, what did you grow up watching? I mean, you mentioned different eras sort of in the last 20, 30 years or so. And you also talked about positivity. One of the things that really stood out to me as I was watching Johnson is that it is positive, but not toxically positive. And it is also not corny.
Right.
And right. And I say that also having watched certain sitcoms that have Asian Americans in it. And sometimes it's really almost cringy. So thinking about what you watched as you were growing up and how to get at positive and realistic, but not go into that corny territory. How does that work?
You know, that's the brilliance of Deji Luray. He's the one who created Johnson, and I think that it really stems from who the writers are. You know, I think that sometimes things come across corny because the person writing it is just corny, you know, and so and they may or may not take good notes, or the studio may or may not give good notes, and so I think that that's why it's very important to, you know, have a producing team who all has the same agenda and understanding of what the project is and what the goal of it is. And so, I grew up, to your question about what were some of the things that I watched growing up, it was stuff like The Cosby Show and Martin, and one of my favorite movies is I'm Gonna Get You Sucker. So again, the Wayans brothers, you know,
Right.
all things Wayans, you know, in Living Color. I mean, and then you had other shows like Different Strokes, and you know, just those really phenomenal shows that showed families and that showed how they dealt with real life scenarios. I think that that's what's lacking a lot of times nowadays. And I think, again, that's why this show does so well, because we did have a lot of that growing up in the 80s, 90s. And we don't have a lot of that today. And so, again, I think that really lends to it doing well, because we are just so in need of positive imagery, but also from a Black male perspective. Like, we have, you know, good shows like Run the World, and, you know, you had Insecure and some of these other shows that show Black women, right? But we don't really see that Black male perspective. And that's a big part of the reason why a lot of women watch it. They love that Black male perspective, because I think a lot of times, you know, as women, no matter what race you are, you know, we think we know what men think, and vice versa. They think they know what we think and want to, right? But oftentimes we are both off base. And so it's nice to be able to, there's a slogan that we have with Johnson called, it's Black men thinking out loud. And so I think that this show is, it does such a good job of sharing these various perspectives on how people handle their lives. We agree with some and we don't with others, but that's life too, right? We don't always agree with everything that everybody does, or even everything that we do, right? Because we're human. Again, there's that humanity piece that's so important that gets overlooked. But we're all human. We make mistakes. We're trying to figure it out. Although there are a gazillion books about how to live the best life, like, everybody is different. Everybody's lives are from various backgrounds. And so I think, again, we have to lend each other grace, and we have to lend each other understanding and help, so that we can be the best versions of ourselves and serve the world the best way we can.
Serving the world, as you say, in the best way. Reesha, you have collaborated with some really big names in entertainment. And two of those people, you mentioned earlier, Bird and Bear, Cedric the Entertainer, who grew up in St. Louis, and Eric Rhone, whose home base is in St. Louis, are two of the people that you've worked with. What has it been like to collaborate with them and with Black men who have had different experiences and have lived somewhere where you've grown up?
It's such a blessing. Honestly, I literally have to pinch myself all the time. Like, it just doesn't get old for me, because I live in a space of gratitude every day. And so it's been really a dream come true to work with them because, you know how it is. You leave home and you go to a city like Los Angeles, and you're kind of like a fish out of water. LA is a big city, and it will eat you up and spit you out if you let it. And so it has been nothing short of an immense blessing working with those gentlemen, watching how they work, learning from them. But also, I appreciate that they see value in me. It's such a huge blessing for me because, I've definitely been in scenarios in other jobs where I didn't feel seen, and I didn't feel heard, and I didn't feel appreciated. So to be in the midst of these great human beings with the cachet that they bring and the breath that they bring, for them to see value in me is amazing.
Reesha, what is it like for you to come back home to St. Louis now that you have achieved as much as you have? And also, how does that affect what you think about doing in the future?
It's an honor to come back home. I come back home often. I'm very close with my family, so I'm there all the time. The love that St. Louis gives is unparalleled. Like, I don't know about you, but the people in St. Louis are some of the realest people I've ever met in my life. and when they love on you hard. Yeah. And it is just, it's like a hug, And so it's always a blessing to come back home and, visit with my family, go to my church. I'm very close with my church family as well. And so it's a blessing to come back home and share whatever I can with the people there. One of the things that I really want to do is be able to broaden the film and TV space and really pour whatever I can that I've learned into the city, because I feel like St. Louis is one of those places that has a ton of talent. But I think that oftentimes people get scared, right? And they get a little fearful of jumping out there. Sometimes folks are comfortable with being a big fish in a small pond, or because LA is far away, it just feels far away. Or I don't know how to get into that realm, so I'm just going to do what I can here and that's it, because I just don't know how. So when I left St. Louis, I remember praying on the drive, 25-hour drive with my daddy. I remember that drive and praying, like, God, I want to be a conduit. Like, I want to be used by you to be able to pull in people who you love and have purpose for in entertainment. I know that I'm going to have to, work to get into certain rooms, but I don't want people to have to fight to get into certain spaces. I want to be that bridge. And so it's been nothing short of a blessing for me. I look at me being in the space that I'm in, and of course, I'm not nearly where I want to be. I'm trying to grow every day. But it has been a blessing to be able to, recommend people from St. Louis for things like The Voice, or I don't know if you know Aloha Michelle, but she was one of the finalists on American Idol years ago. I actually did background vocals with her. But to be able to pull her and to hear more on to Johnson, they auditioned for those roles, but I was able to at least get them an audition. So I'm always looking for opportunities to, bring St. Louis into the fold of what I'm doing, music artists that I know and love from St. Louis. We've been able to get them, sync opportunities on some of our shows. So I'm always trying to find a way to pull St. Louis into the fold of the things that I'm doing, because it is full of such dynamic people and dynamic talent.
I wanted to be sure to ask you about 13 Days in Ferguson. That is a documentary that aired on a mainstream outlet. It was on CBS.
Yes.
How was that different from other work that you've done? And especially because you are representing St. Louis, and so much of what people know is unfortunately based on tragic events. What did it mean for you to be part of that project?
Oh my God, it meant everything. When I found out that the project was greenlit, I reached out to Eric immediately and was like, hey, I want to be a part of this. Whatever y'all need me to do, I will do it. Because I wanted to make sure that there was somebody on the ground. Like, I knew Eric would be there, and Cedric would be there, but I wanted to have another St. Louis producer on the ground to make sure that St. Louis was represented correctly, and that we had representation across the board from voices who I knew were a part of everything that was going on in St. Louis at that time. It was, man, I feel like I cried so much during the filming of that, because Captain Ron Johnson is just a beautiful human being. And I remember, because I was in LA when all of that was happening, and I remember when they brought him on, and all I remember saying was, thank you, Jesus, because I felt like we needed somebody Black on the ground, because St. Louis is known for, police not treating Black folks properly. So I felt like we needed somebody who looked like us to be in the fold of that. And so although I was very grateful he was there too, I also was a little bit afraid, because I know, not afraid because I don't lead with fear, but concerned, I think is a better word, because I know how crazy things can get at times. But I was very grateful that he was there. And then after getting to know him and understand his heart and his mission for being there, I was just eternally grateful for being a part of that project. I think that it was also important to show the dynamics of what it means to be a Black police officer, because it's tricky, I think a lot of times Black people who are in uniform get caught up in what it is to be in uniform, and I think sometimes they forget that they're Black. And Captain Johnson even said it himself, like, that whole scenario reminded him of just how Black he was, because some of the police turned their back on him because of the decisions that he was making to keep the people safe and to keep the peace. And so he put his career on the line for that investigation, and he thought he was going to lose his position, but he did the best he could with what he had. And for that, I'm so proud of him. And being able to watch the dynamic between him and Cedric, like that project was very unique, because it wasn't your typical documentary interview style, right? Like, you literally had this well-known A-list celebrity partnered with his fraternity brother, who, when they were pledging in college back in the day, they had no idea either of them would be in the positions that they're in right now.
Right.
So it was a very unique scenario, and it was really beautiful being able to watch them, interact with one another, to see the vulnerability that they both had that you're not typically going to see from someone being interviewed by a stranger.
Yeah.
Like, this was a brother interviewing a brother and really getting to the nitty gritty of what he had to deal with, how he was feeling, how it had impacted him, not only him, but his family as well, and the community. And so to date, I want to say that is one of my favorite projects because, again, this is ministry for me. I'm very intentional about the types of stories that I tell as a producer. And this by far was one of my favorite because of what it meant to tell that story and how it really just shed light on a lot of things that we didn't particularly know about that occurrence in 2014. And it was really just a blessing to be a part of it.
Reesha, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you for this time.
This episode was produced by Emily Woodbury.
Recorded by Maya Norfleet.
Our audio engineer is Aaron Dorr. This podcast was mixed and edited by Aaron.
Our executive producer is Alex Hoyer.
St. Louis on the Air is a production of St. Louis Public Radio. Understanding starts here.
Do you find yourself regularly listening to episodes of St. Louis on the Air? Suggest us to a friend you think might enjoy our conversations, and leave us a review and rating on Apple Podcasts on the App Store. It's the simplest way to help people discover our show. Thank you.
St. Louis Public Radio is a member-supported service of the University of Missouri St. Louis.